991, and I was helping my father farm 720 acres down near Beach when my induction notice came, and we just completed taking the corn out of the field and standing around a lot, and the mailman delivered the notice. And so I was to report on December 3rd, 1941. So I reported, and of course a few days later Pearl Harbor, December 7th. And so then, to tell you how long I was in, I was gone from home for 35 months before I got to go home for a furlough. And anyway, they gave us some tests, and they came out and said these following people may go into the Air Force without signing up for 3 years. And I was one of those who was chosen. And they sent us down. Well, first of all, the fellows that did not go into the Air Force at that time were sent to South Africa and fought all those battles, and I mean in North Africa, all the way through Italy and into Europe, clear into Europe. And the longer you stay in combat, the more likely you are to be killed. And so very few of those fellows ever came back. But anyway, I was sent to Shepherd Field, Texas, to airplane mechanic school, and I took that course, and they sent us out to San Diego to the Consolidated Aircraft Factory where they made B-24s, and I went to school 1 month out there learning the mechanical work on B-24s, and then we were assigned to a training group in Louisiana for a month or two, and then up to Oklahoma City to another Air Force base. And they were in such a hurry to get us overseas that they shipped us our outfit over immediately. We went on the Queen Mary, the enlisted men that weren't on the flight crews, went on the Queen Mary without a convoy because they were so fast, and they would change course of direction every so many seconds, back and forth, and zigzag all the way across the ocean. And because of that, the Queen Mary listed over this way, and then listed over to the other way, all the way across, and I got sicker. I got sicker at that time than I've ever been in my life before or since. And but anyway, we got over there without anything happening to us, and then we were assigned to this B-24 group that was stationed over in the east part of England, Norfolk County, which was closer to Germany, and would give them farther range that they could fly in on the fuel and the bomb load. And there were so many, before the war was over, there were so many airdromes, they called them, airfields. They were so close together, every 3 or 4 miles apart, that when the planes would be coming in to land, circling their flight pattern around one field, they'd almost intersect the adjoining airfield over here and all around them. And just like we were a floating aircraft carrier in England. And anyway, when we first went over in September of '42, there were only 2 Liberator groups, B-24s, and 3 B-17 groups. And when they went out on their first raids, they had no fighter escort whatsoever, and they bombed the submarine yards where they produce submarines for the Germans. And I know that first flight, one of the planes in our squadron came back and had a big hole up in the cockpit above the co-pilot's pilot's head, and he was injured, so he couldn't fly the plane, but the co-pilot brought it back. And of course, the losses were extremely heavy because we had no fighter escort at that time. In 1943, they still were not producing enough airplanes to replace them very fast, and still didn't have very many flight crews to replace the ones that were shot down. So it was rather demoralizing, because in the boys on the flight crews told us that in their flight crew mess, they would get fewer and fewer after each mission. Fewer and fewer people left, which was rather demoralizing. Later on, we were still losing maybe even more planes, but it wasn't quite so noticeable because they had so many new flight crews coming over and so many new planes coming over to replace them. I was a mechanic on B-24, and before the war was over, I was a crew chief on a plane of my own. And we would sometimes work all night out there. In the wintertime, it was not as cold as Iowa, but it was very chilly. And we would have to work on them in time so that they'd be ready for the mission the following morning about daybreak. And I remember many nights out there we'd have to change generators, and we'd have to reach clear back into the center of the airplane and try to start nuts on the bolts, and our fingers were numb and we couldn't feel anything, and it was some experience. And then once or twice a plane didn't have good enough brakes evidently, and they ran off the runway and sank in about 2 or 3 feet in the mud, and we had to jack them up and try to get them back on the taxiway. But I can't even begin to tell you all the experiences I had, but we saw planes, one of them was on a test flight after a new engine was installed, and they all of a sudden just, while I was watching it fly, all of a sudden it just spun into the ground, and the minute it hit the ground it blew back up with 100 octane gasoline. And somebody was mentioning a while ago the dogs. All they got of the crew was just the trunk of the body, and the pieces of meat were all over the hillside, and the dogs rolled around there for 2 weeks picking up the meat.
Tell about how you kept warm at night out there in the
And we built cardboard shacks out around where our planes were stored, and and when we get the plane ready and everything, we would have a cot in there, and we would go sleep, and we would heat.
Let me turn this off for a minute. Okay. Ernie Pyle told all about you guys making these little homes for yourselves, and how you'd wait. Did you ever wait for your plane? Did you know the guys on the who were out there, or any of the crews? Did you know any of them that you were waiting for, and whether they'd come back or not, and that type of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey,
You tell me when you're ready again.
We'll try it again.
Okay.
Going to get you a drink of water there, and that'll help your voice.
Maybe right away.
Crew chief do.
He was the boss of the airplane as far as maintaining it. He'd do all the mechanical and was responsible for the mechanical work on the airplane if something went wrong with it. An important man.
These cardboard shacks that we built out next to the apron where the airplane was parked, we heated them with little barrel stoves that we made homemade, and we had a tank rigged up where we would mix up used oil that we drained out of the engines with 100 octane gasoline to the right texture. Ran it with copper tubing down into this little stove, and then opened the petcock and drip for heat. And so back here, when you were being rationed for gasoline, we were using 100 octane gasoline.
Did they ever blow?
Oh no.
How long were you in altogether, Bob?
I was in for 45 months.
45 months.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
Yeah. And anyway, we would get very closely acquainted with our flight crew. Before I became crew chief, I was on another ground crew that they made their 35 missions on the plane, and they felt very close to the crew chief and the people who were working on planes, and they would do a lot of kidding back and forth, and that was interesting. But anyway, to tell a few more experiences, sometimes the planes would come back, and one time it was socked in with fog, and they had to fly down lower than 100 feet to the ground to be able to see the ground, and somehow through the radio they were able to circle the field. But as they circled and came to and saw the runway right ahead of them, they'd be going at right angles to the runway. They couldn't tip their wings far enough to bank to get into the runway, so some of them even tried turning without even banking and sliding sideways through the air. But I don't know how in the world we ever got those guys down, but we did. And sometimes when they would come back all shot up, we would know they radio ahead. Some of them, they were coming in late, sometimes on one good engine and maybe one that was barely able to put out a little bit of power, and they were really limping when they come in. But one came back shot up so bad that they had a crew member that couldn't parachute out, so the pilot ordered everybody to parachute out on the way back over England. But since he couldn't parachute out, they elected, the pilot and the co-pilot elected to bring it in on one landing gear down to try to save him. And they had the whole airfield was full of people waiting for it to come in. And when he landed on one wheel and held the other wing up high till it slowed down enough that he lost the lift, and it drug along there a while and finally slipped sideways, and he made it. And you should have heard the cheer that went up. But another thing kind of interesting, we had to inspect the first aid kits around through the plane, because when they came back, when they had, say, like lost a leg or something like that, they would have to have morphine, or they had a little bit of tube of morphine that they could give them a shot. Otherwise, they'd go in shock and die before they got back. But there was just evidently a few druggies over there even then, because they would break the seal on those and take the morphine out of those first aid kits. But anyway, we watched that pretty carefully. And then we got acquainted with some of the people that were nearby on the farms, and I didn't smoke, but I went to the PX and bought a carton of cigarettes, and I would trade it for eggs, fresh eggs, because that was quite a delicacy over there. With the powdered eggs, we got so tired of it, almost sick of it. And so we did that. And then we were befriended, a buddy of mine from Sheraton took our 3-day passes in London, and we were sightseeing. We were in a cab, a British cab, the kind with the cloth tops, and got acquainted with this guy, and he would take us around like a tour guide, and we really appreciated that. And then the second day, he brought his 16-year-old daughter along, who was a nice-looking girl, and
wow.
She was nice, and so we enjoyed ourselves in some of the passes we were able to have in London. And one night, the German planes came over, and they were shooting up so much anti-aircraft that we were coming home from some theater or something in his cab with the whole family and us two men. And so much aircraft anti-aircraft were going up and the shrapnel was coming down, you could hear it hitting metal railings that led into downstairs and around the building. And he had a cloth top. The cab. Then while I was over there, we got to, I was interested in livestock because I was in 4-H work here in the county so much, and had some purebred cattle before I left. And another fellow, a buddy of mine, over there in the outfit, was from Colorado, and he had a herd of Hereford cattle, he and his father. And so we got to leave and went over to Herefordshire to visit a ranch where they bred purebred Hereford cattle. And these were prize cattle, beautiful bulls that they sold to South America. And these people were very wealthy, of course, and they were so good to us and kind to us. And I remember they went into their home. Well, we stayed in their home overnight, and they had a relative that was nearby, and he came in, and he was a typical aristocrat from England. They called him landed gentry, and he would smoke his pipe and lean up against the fireplace, and had dressed in the usual.
He was
British,
perfect Englishman
He was a
then.
perfect picture of landed gentry.
Yes.
And we really enjoyed that trip when we went over there. And then, since we had so many points at the end of the war, well, maybe I better back up a little farther. So one time during my experience over there, I got a weekend pass and decided I'd go over to see my old friend Verlin McGraw, and I knew where he was stationed.
Bring Berlin in. I want him in that video.
He's been on here. We've already had him.
Yeah.
Verlin, I got over there and walked into his air base, and they said he's missing in action. He was shot down, which was quite a shock for me and ruined my day. But anyway, when I got back, I didn't know what happened to him, whether he was one of the planes that crashed and died or not. But anyway, I learned through the mail that he was a prisoner of war. So I didn't get to visit him over there. But anyway, so when war was over there, I was ready to come back. They had just given me a brand new airplane. So I didn't know whether I would be one of the first wave that fly back or not. But anyway, I had good luck, I guess. The squadron commander and the flight surgeon decided they didn't want to fly on one of those old planes back, and they wanted to fly on a new plane. So they chose my plane. So we went to the nearby farmers and got a whole bunch of fresh eggs and hard-boiled eggs. And this is going to be a delicacy. Somebody got a hold of something like RC Cola, several cases, and we took off on the plane and we enjoyed ourselves on the way back.
I think we had a picnic on the way home.
Yeah. And we landed in Newfoundland for one stop, and then we flew on and landed in Connecticut, and we were so happy to be back after 3 years over there that a bunch of us got out and got down and kissed the runway. And it makes you appreciate the United States. And then we flew on to New Jersey, and there I got my first taste of fresh milk that I've had for 3 years. And all we had to drink over there was coffee. I don't know why I never got addicted to coffee, because as soon as I got back, I weaned myself back to milk very easily. And then we came home, and I got a 3-day pass. I mean a month's furlough at home. And then we reported back up to South Dakota. Then we were sent to Peyote Field in near El Paso, Texas, to learn to be B-29 mechanics. And we were there when they dropped the bomb. So
Never asked you what all you all felt about dropping the bomb.
We didn't object.
Fine.
There was another Indianola person in your same air base, and that was
Earl Smith.
Earl Smith. Graduated from my
Yeah, I know.
high school with me
You know him,
in
I do.
1960.
Yeah, I know.
Earl Smith.
Harold's younger.
One of those funny experiences we had over there. Our Quonset hut barracks were metal, of course, and we all slept in double-deck bunks. And every once in a while, a harassing German plane would come over and fly over airfields, and they had intercoms, and they would say, black, air raid warning, black, and that meant that they were in the vicinity. And so one night we were fooling around and enjoying ourselves there in the barracks, and so they came over the intercom, air raid warning, black, and one of the guys on the upper bunk there, he was laying up there, and he said, "I'm not getting out of this sack unless I get a personal invitation." And then they said, "Air raid warning, red." And just then a stick of bombs came down about 200 yards from our barracks. Boom, 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 like that. And he said, "That's it." He just rolled out.
That's my invitation.
Cleared the concrete floor.
He never forgot that. That was his invitation. Do you want to show us your picture when you were...
Oh, just me.
Well, let's see what you looked like when you were...
I was a little younger in those days, you can tell. And I also had another funny thing happen. My best buddy, who was this Colorado rancher, everybody wanted to kid him about sheep herding, because ranchers and sheep herders didn't get along very well. So they'd always say, "Chappie from Colorado." Try to get his goat, but he was for good humor. He never
bothered him.
Show your other picture. Put your other picture.
Oh, no. This one, did I show this one?
No. Hold it up just a little higher. There you go. You look young and innocent.
Well, it's good stories, all of them.
Yes, they were.
Thank you, people.